everyone, it's Jason from EskimoTV.net. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is going to be our top 10 favorite movies of 2020, and we have a treat for you all today. I have two writers from the EskimoTV.net website with us, Rishabh and David. They're going to, alongside me, give you our top favorite films of the year. These are our personal favorite films that we enjoyed. And so these are not full-on reviews. These are just going to be our quick thoughts on why we liked each particular movie. And so everyone has a different reason for why they connected with all of these different films. Our list is going to look a lot different than your list. And so I am curious as to what films you liked this year. Please let us know in the comments below what your favorite 10 or maybe just even favorite 3 or 5 movies were. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and dive in to number 10. Rishabh, why don't you get things started? What was your 10th favorite film in 2020?
So my 10th favorite film is from a genre we did not get a lot of this year. That's the comic book genre. I'm sure a lot of people just, got off of seeing Wonder Woman 1984. But there was one other DC movie that came out this year. I'm talking about Birds of Prey. Long title there too, but I'm going to go with the shorter Harley Quinn Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
So for this one, I didn't really expect to see this one coming up this high in my list, but given the lack of competition this year, I think in terms of superhero escapism or comic book escapism, I don't think there's any movie that really kind of delivered that for me this year other than Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. I felt like this movie had a really good combination of a very kind of zany Saturday morning cartoon with some of that kind of gritty, R-rated sensibility to it to kind of mesh together. I thought the performances were great. I thought Kathy Yan did a really great job of directing it. There was a good amount of humor, and the action sequences here were surprisingly well-helmed and well-directed. I think if you're looking for sort of superhero escapism this year, the one to go with would be Birds of Prey.
Definitely. I thought Birds of Prey was a fun movie. I really liked the setup of the character. Wasn't my favorite film of the year, but I definitely had a good time with it. And I think it's actually on David's list a little later on.
Way high up on my list. I love it. It's one of my favorite comic book movies because it felt so fun, and it's got problems, but those problems are all built around portraying this character. So it's the problems with the film make sense in this film being like this embodiment of Harley Quinn's character. So if you liked her character and you really enjoyed her character, those problems don't bother you because it's like you're in her headspace and you're experiencing the movie as her for just a bit, and it's a blast.
I thought Margot Robbie did a phenomenal you can't replace her type of performance in that film, and it took what I think would have been just another superhero movie and made me get more invested into her story.
It made up a lot for me for what they did with Suicide Squad, because after Suicide Squad, yeah. I'm like, you can replace the entire cast. I don't care about anyone here, and it 100% made up for that.
That's a good number 10. Good way to get this video started. So my number 10 was Invisible Man. I thought Elizabeth Moss did absolutely wonderful in that film. I like what Lee Winnell does. I'm a huge Saw franchise fan, and I watched the commentary on that film, and there's kind of a real science to it. Like if there really was a suit made up of cameras that really reflected what they were looking at, you would get somewhat of this invisible looking dude. It's a little far-fetched for sure, but I had a lot of fun with it. And I really think that she took what would have been just another average horror film and made it a little bit of an above average film that I enjoyed. It was one of the last movies that I saw before theaters closed down this year. And so really good once again, another early on flick that I definitely had fun and even had more of a fun time watching on second viewing.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely higher up on my list. Not too much higher, but I'll kind of save my review for it for then. But I agree. Lee Winnell has done great things, and I'm seeing a promising future there for sure.
I loved Elizabeth Moss in that movie. It was the rest of the movie I couldn't deal with.
Yeah, I know you weren't too much of a fan of
No.
that particular film, but I just had a fun time with it. It was nothing like phenomenal or awards like buzz, but I just thought it was a good time at the movies. David, you're number 10.
So I want to throw in 11, 10, and 9 on here. But my bottom three for this year were Underwater, Gretel and Hansel, and The Hunt.
I like The Hunt out of all
Okay.
three of those. I did not like Underwater, or I thought Gretel and Hansel was okay, but here, I'll let you
Well, on a
go off
normal
on
year,
that.
these probably wouldn't make it because all of them have deep issues, that just wouldn't compete when you get like a 1090 movies.
Yeah.
But this year it was kind of scarce, so it's kind of a fun year in that I'm really kind of picking the things that I just enjoyed. Underwater, I'd put at the least of those if I had to mark them. That's the one that would have fallen off. But Gretel and Hansel, The Hunt, and Underwater, all of them did this thing where they put together horror movies that kind of really settled wonderfully into this nice little niche, and all of them were kind of fun to watch. Especially Gretel and Hansel and The Hunt, and they end up being pretty political in interesting ways.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's cool. I thought that the cinematography in Gretel and Hansel
yeah,
was really good. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on now to number 9. I'm a huge Swiftie fan, for those of y'all that don't know. So I really liked Miss Americana. This was a really interesting insight look to Taylor Swift, her life, and I felt like I really got to know who she was, because prior to watching the film, there's rumors and things you hear online and articles, but I felt like this really pulled the curtain behind her as an artist, and we really got to see her beliefs, some of the struggles she's had growing up as an artist, and I found it to be rather intriguing.
An interesting choice. I also saw a music documentary this year. I feel like I saw more music documentaries this year than any other year. I didn't see Miss Americana, but I did see a documentary on K-pop group Blackpink, which I thought was really good. It didn't crack any of my lists or honorable mentions, but it's a movie I would recommend for fun. But
So what's your number 9?
my number 9 is actually still related to music, though. So my number 9 is a movie called Clouds. I feel like this one went under the radar for a lot of people. Might be because people don't have Disney Plus, but I feel like with all the hype around Mandalorian and things like that, it feels like everyone has Disney Plus. But this is based on a novel, a real life story, which was written by Zach Sobiek's mom, who basically lost his battle with cancer, but he was this amazing teen musician. He went on to write this really great single called Clouds, which is what the movie is named after. I think movies that kind of deal with this sort of tragic material, it's pretty hard to get that balance right and capture like the gravitas of the tragedy without, making it feel manipulative. I think a lot of movies that kind of deal with tragic stories like this often head into manipulation territory, or they feel very artificial. But I feel like what they did with Clouds is through like a good combination of music and performances and a story that was done with a lot more restraint than usual. It made the movie feel genuinely heart-wrenching. And the movie's directed by Justin Baldoni, who did 5 Feet Apart, very timely title these days. But so I haven't seen 5 Feet Apart, but I know that a lot of people have said that's a great movie that also kind of has a similar story without, getting into that manipulative area. So if you haven't seen Clouds, I highly recommend it. I feel like no one's talking about this movie. It's on Disney Plus. It is a Disney Plus original that I found to be surprisingly really, really good.
I hadn't heard of it, but I'll definitely, which is odd. I'm like, what?
Yeah, a movie I
I'll,
haven't heard of.
yeah, I'll definitely keep that on my radar and check it out. David, well, I guess you went over 9, 10, and 11, so we'll go ahead and go to number 8. So my number 8 was The Prom. This was a Netflix musical directed by the creator of Glee, Ryan Murphy. And I thought it was a really fun, sweet film. Like, if you just had a shot of sweetness and injected it into a film, that's what I feel like The Prom is. It's very heartwarming. It's very lighthearted. At the same time, it's very funny. There's a lot of people I know, the Rotten Tomatoes score is not the best. There's a lot of people that have problems with it, say it's too silly, it's a little over the top, and I can definitely recognize that. But for me, I cannot deny that with my experience, I thought that the story was interesting. So for those people that don't know, girl wants to go to her prom with her girlfriend, but the PTA says is not comfortable with that. It's a very like close-minded town or school board, and so they decide to just cancel the prom altogether. So Meryl Streep, James Corden, Nicole Kidman are Broadway stars, get word of this, try to go save the day, and it's just a fun time. I thought it had a good positive message that a whole family could see. A good, easy LGBT film, but appropriate for, I would think, all ages. It's nothing too like provocative about it. I thought Meryl Streep did really good. Joe Ellen Pellman and the girl that she likes were both really good in that film. I thought any song where they were singing together was really good. I'm trying to remember the other girl's name. Ariane DeBose.
I remember wanting to see this one. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, DeBose. She's great.
I saw The Prom. Jason, going off what you said, I did see this movie. I'm definitely not as ecstatic as you, but I like this film. I liked it a lot more than most people. I think it's getting a little bit too much hate. For me, I'd say the highlight is easily, I mean, of course, Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, you have all these great people in it, but for me, it's always the kind of new discoveries. And for me, Joe Ellen Pellman was really great in the film. I thought she did really, really well. So I didn't really crack any of my honorable mentions or top 15, but I will say, yeah, I don't really understand why it's so much hate toward the movie. I think there's a few places where it kind of lulls and the music didn't really work for me, but I can see people not getting into that, but overall not a bad flick to check out.
Yeah, it's definitely a little long. Nicole Kidman, I love her to death. I think she's great in it, but her song, unfortunately, I feel like could have easily been cut to bring the movie 5-10 minutes shorter. And there's probably a couple songs that they could have cut. I think Andrew Reynolds' acceptance song probably didn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
But it is based on a Broadway, and so I do feel like they had the pressure of getting a new audience that hasn't seen the Broadway to like it, but also to satisfy the people that are really already invested into that original material.
Exactly, yeah.
I had to watch this one this year. Jason, when you invited me to it, you're just like, you want to go to prom? And I thought you were inviting me to actual prom.
Yeah, I invited David to go watch The Prom with me. And
I'm not leaving the house to go to a party that big.
Yeah, so for those of y'all that don't know, I'm a high school educator. I teach 9th through 12th grade, so it makes sense as to why he would have the thought. But I don't know, why would I invite you to prom, dude?
I don't know. I thought it was super weird. I was honestly a little uncomfortable. Like, oh, the movie Prom.
Yes. So next time, man, just assume it's a movie event. If I'm like, do you want to go to, I don't know, I can't think of something else, but yeah. What was your number 8, David?
So my number 8 was Promising Young Woman.
Oh, that movie was so good. That's a little higher up in my list, but I love that movie.
So I was based on the trailers though, I was wanting so much more violence.
Yeah.
Like I ended up being a little bit disappointed by the muted, sort of very reasonable tone the movie struck because I mean it was like preaching right up to my alley. Like you hear about this type of stuff all the time and you're like it's so gross. I just want to see those people like slasher murdered.
Yeah. I think Carey Mulligan gives a phenomenal performance in that
Oh,
film.
she
Yeah,
is incredible, and that's honestly the reason it makes it so high on my list. Is she just kills it, and I
exactly.
love her in that movie. And overall, it was an outstandingly just thought provoking, excellent film.
Yes, it's she's beautiful first of all, and then she can portray a sense of um indifference, but also you can tell there's something emotionally
Right.
wrong with her that's happened. And I kind of did want to see like what is she doing, because you don't for sure know. Like she's writing in her journal and she has different colors, I think, to represent different things that she ends up doing to
Mhm.
these people. But I too, I think, wanted to see her like, you know, uh get a little bit more violent. But I think them not doing that makes the last act, which does get the most violent out of everything, a little bit more shocking, because it's been withheld for so long. So when it goes off at the end, I
Yeah,
think it's a little bit more impactful. But at the same time, I see what you're saying with,
they do such a wonderful job of making you absolutely hate the antagonists, like loathe them, because
yeah,
nothing feels horrible enough to make you feel better for the horrible things they do.
yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah, I saw Promising Young Woman as well. I'm a huge fan of Carey Mulligan. Actually, I kind of watching this movie had made me rediscover how great she is. I just watched Wildlife for the first time yesterday. Highly recommend that. That
oh yeah,
was Jake Gyllenhaal. To the violence aspect of the movie, I feel like I read an interview with the director Emerald Fennell, and her whole kind of approach with the movie was kind of straying away from that violence and trying to show what would Carey Mulligan's character probably do in real life. And so I think if you look at it from the lens of where the director was trying to take that film, it makes more sense. And I totally understand that some people felt like the movie needed to go a little bit more crazy. But I think they tried to do a reflection of real life, which I think was also a rather interesting approach. And for me, it kind of elevated the movie. That one's on my honorable mentions coming up for sure.
all right. Rashab, I believe, have you said your number 8 yet?
I have not.
All right, what was your number 8?
So I haven't said it, but it's been said before. It is The Invisible Man, directed by Lee Winnell. I think everyone saw this movie in theaters, probably one of the last ones they all saw. Yeah, I thought this movie was fantastic. I think Lee Winnell pretty much has the body horror genre down. I did see Possessor. I know, Jason, you saw that too, and that was supposed to be the other big kind of body horror film this year. Not as impressed by that. I think this one has the real suspense to go with the violence that's on screen, and I think the blend of that makes this one a lot better. And I think Elizabeth Moss, I mean, she was born for these kind of roles anyway, but I think The Invisible Man again just showcases her talents. And I think the great thing about Lee Winnell too is how he combines all the genres together. So there's a little bit of science fiction, horror, action, all together. And I thought, yeah, this movie really did a great job with all of those things.
And I like the pacing of that movie is so upbeat, and listening to the commentary, he even said like there was supposed to be a lot of stuff that happened before she leaves that house at the beginning, but he
Mm-hmm.
he just really kept on revisiting like how do I kind of get this to get to where it needs to faster. And
Yeah,
I think it certainly pays off. In the deleted scenes, there's like a ton of other things that happens when she gets to her friend's place that's supposed to like be helping her in the film.
mm-hmm.
So I definitely think as much as there's a lot of stuff that he wanted to include, he understands also about getting to the main parts of the film that are going to hold the audience's attention and keep them engaged, and I appreciate that.
Definitely.
Some of the things I disliked about that movie, I do want to say one of the things I liked is just the wonderful way he managed to make the Invisible Man feel like PTSD. Like,
Yeah.
even when there was no way the guy was in the room, he made you feel like it could be there and why you would always be looking over your shoulder. And it was just so awesome, the playfulness with the camera there.
All right, we're going to go ahead and be moving on now to number 7. So my 7th favorite film of 2020 was a foreign film on Netflix called The Life Ahead. Really great film with Sophia Loren, who gives a outstanding performance. So she's taking in this younger African-American kid played by, I hope I'm saying this right, Ibrahima Guy. He doesn't have parents. He's gets into trouble, and in fact, at the beginning of the film, he steals something from her. And so it's on Netflix. I recommend people watch it. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was a realistic look at a coming of age and what happens when you're maybe not born into a family that can teach you good morals and the type of things that you have to go through. So that was my number 7.
My number 7 is another weird one. It's going to be Borat's subsequent movie film, Delivery of Prodigious Bribe to American Regime for Make Benefit Once Glorious Nation, Kazakhstan.
I did not get the chance to watch it. So why did you like it?
So I just maybe I've changed, or it hit a lot of really great points for me. I've been liking all the political movies this year, and the satire is just so bitingly scathing. And he toned down some of the things I didn't like from the previous one. I was surprised I liked this one so much. I'm not the biggest fan of the original Borat film. With this one, there is sort of a running plot line that's honestly a little more heartwarming about growth for his relationship. That you get to see some of the brighter spots as he visits people who are not like all horrible, but there's like these things where they treat people nice or they try and develop something. I thought it was a better movie, and I've just been loving almost everything from Sacha Baron Cohen lately. He's a terrific clown. And the thing that really made me appreciate him more than anything I've seen before was Who is America? And so this is a follow-up to that, was just an outstanding follow-up.
Yeah, I think if you look at the movie from like a satirical prank movie kind of perspective, I think it's great as a film itself. Not like as over the moon over it, but Sacha Baron Cohen as usual is great. But I think everybody within like critics and movie fans everywhere, we've been talking about Maria Bakalova, who did such an excellent film too.
She's outstanding.
Yeah.
So, Rishabh, what was yours, number 7?
So my number 7's one that I think is going to get more Best Actor buzz than Best Picture buzz, which I think is a little bit of a shame since I think the film itself is really good too. This is Sound of Metal. This stars Riz Ahmed.
Yeah.
A movie about a drummer, a heavy metal drummer, who experiences deafness for the first time. And I thought this movie was really well done from an emotional restraint point of view. I thought they had really great naturalistic acting throughout the film, and the way that everything is handled within this movie from an emotional point of view is just absolutely phenomenal. I think that Riz Ahmed, first of all, as a performer, he's extremely understated in this movie. There wasn't really any point at which I didn't believe in his performance. And I think the director, not to butcher his name, but Darius Martyr, I think he did a fantastic job of not just portraying the deaf community, but also portraying the journey of a person who, you know, has zero experience with deafness coming to terms with something that will alter his life forever, basically. So I thought that journey in particular, I thought was very, very personal, very compelling. I thought Sound Metal definitely, also with the sound editing they did, overall did a really great job of all those things.
Yeah, I Sound of Metal, I really wanted to have it in my top 10. Didn't quite get there, but I really did enjoy that movie. It would definitely be like in a top 15 or a top 20. I thought Riz Ahmed did excellent, and the sound design for that movie it definitely, I feel like, should be nominated in the sound category, because it's
Yeah.
very detrimental for the audience themselves to get somewhat of a taste. It might not be 100% accurate, but to get just a little bit of maybe what someone who is deaf might feel like. And so it was such an important piece to that film. It did not, unfortunately, I thought that the premise was really good, and I could definitely relate to the shakeup or the like dramaticness of losing your hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, it never like hit me emotionally as much as I think I wanted it to. I thought it was excellent. I was curious as to how he was going to go about handling it. I didn't have that emotional hit that I think maybe some other people had with that film, but I really did enjoy it. I thought it was well done.
I think for me too, the final moments of that movie too are just so powerful, where it kind of alludes back to a moment that he has with one of the supporting cast members, who I think did phenomenal. I just can't remember his name, but there's this whole line about looking for those moments of stillness, is what he tells to Riz Ahmed. And without getting too much into spoilers, I think, you know, the connection they make with that small piece of dialogue in the film towards the end of the movie is one of the most powerful, I think, conclusions to any movie that I've seen this year. Actually, I think it was fantastic how they handled that from a sound perspective, from a visual perspective, and what Riz Ahmed does from a performance perspective into creating those closing moments of the film.
Cool deal. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to number 6. David, why don't you go ahead and talk about your number 6 film?
So I get to put another fun horror movie one on here. Loved Run, the Hulu original.
Yes.
It had this wonderful tension. I like a good claustrophobic piece where it feels like you're just trapping this character or these characters together and like grinding them against each other until something pops, and it just has such a wonderful evil backbone to it. So that one was very high for me. I loved the performances in it too.
Yeah, that definitely is on my list as well. I thought both Sarah Paulson and Kira Allen were both phenomenal, and yeah, that one had my attention from beginning to end. Did you get to watch Run, Rishabh?
I did. It almost cracked my top 10. I'll be honest, it was just one underneath my number 10. I thought this movie was absolutely great as well. For me, Searching was my favorite movie of, I think, 2018. So I think what Anish Giganti is doing in terms of creating these really, really sharp, compact thrillers is phenomenal. I think he does it again with this movie, I think to a lesser extent than Searching, but I still think the way he's edited the movie too, the pacing of it, how compact and, like David mentioned, this very kind of sinister backbone that the movie has, I think it made it one of probably the best thrillers of the year.
Searching was one of my favorite films in 2018, and it's funny, as my mom actually wanted to watch it this past weekend. I didn't get to watch it with them, but she had me put it on for her and my niece, and I know it was really good. I would need to rewatch it to figure out which one I love more, but once again, like, that just goes to show that Anish Chikante is really good at doing tension and thrills, and is very, I think, detailed in the way he crafts all of it together.
I'd
Right.
probably say I like them both differently for different reasons. This one, Run, I would say their performances got me much more than anything. Whereas with Searching, it's the directing style and that way of capturing the story. It's uh, it's unique,
Yeah.
and I think this was a little bit more of a traditional film with a less
Right.
traditional storyline, as opposed to an untraditional film with a traditional storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think Searching, I think the inventiveness of that movie was what made it my favorite of that year. So I think narratively too, I think Searching's better, but I think again, Run has the same kind of DNA as Searching, where it's this very compact film. I don't think there's really ever sort of a lull moment in the movie or a chance to really breathe, which I kind of enjoy. And I think Anish Gandhi, like I said, it's that sharpness that he brings to his films that I think make it so that he always ends up being on my favorites list. So
If I had to ding it for anything, it would be he spends a lot of his dialogue time on maintenance. You know, when you catch someone having to throw a lot of exposition, even small bits, you know, left and right, so you can catch it to be like, oh, that dialogue is so that we can believe this, and that dialogue is so we can believe that, and it's very utilitarian.
yeah,
But
definitely.
All right. I haven't said my numbers. We're on 6, right?
yeah, six.
We are on 6.
Okay. So my sixth favorite film was Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. It's Eliza Hittman's third film, and she does a really good job. Sydney Flanagan stars in it, and she is trying to have an abortion, but it doesn't really take a stance on like what's right or wrong. It's just a film that kind of shows you the circumstances, and she has to travel with one of her friends because she can't get an abortion where she lives. So unbeknownst to her parents, she goes a distance away to have this abortion. And it's so raw. It's such an uncomfortable viewing experience because
Mhm.
she's not the most likable character. She can be very cold to all the people that she interacts with, but it just felt so real. Like it just felt like, oh, there's someone I know who could be this character. The music, also the lack of it, I should say, is really good because it added to the rawness. It's very just sounds of the world, sounds of the train, sounds of footsteps. Um, so Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always was my sixth favorite film.
Yeah, this one's higher up on my list, so I'm excited to share what I thought about it going down the line. But if no one else has anything, I'll go into my number 6. This was a movie that won some of the biggest accolades at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival, but it did kind of get sort of a wide release this year. This is a foreign film. This is a Russian language film. This is the movie called Beanpole. Now, I don't know how much of the audience knows about this movie, but I definitely would suggest checking this one out. It's this very kind of searing war drama done in somewhat of an artsy manner. I thought the performances here were incredible. I'm not going to try and attempt the names. They're very long and complicated, but I thought both of the leads were excellent in the film. I loved how the movie was shot. It was just restingly shot. It was wonderfully shot. And I thought the film, the way it was directed by Kantemir Balagov, it's a very, very slow burn movie, but I think it really gets at the heart of the characters and the themes in the film. And it's a very sort of devastating portrait of what a lot of people who were left in the wake of World War II had to go through, and some of the very kind of difficult choices that they had to also make in the aftermath of World War II. So throughout the film, we are kind of headed on a road to recovery from the war, but these two characters who are played by the lead actors, they share this very complicated relationship as a result of some of the after effects and the damage of the war. So I think it's a definitely sort of a hefty watch, but one that I think is really well worth seeking out. So definitely check this one out if you can.
Sounds good, man. I'll definitely. I haven't had the chance to look at too many of the foreign films, but definitely something I want to look at before I have to vote in my critics group. David, what is your number 5?
So my number 5 actually ended up being Onward.
Oh, I loved Onward.
Now, it was an awesome movie, and I kind of loved how the end wasn't just this blanket formula ending. It had some texture to it. The entire movie ended up having some good texture to it. It was Pixar just knocks these out of the park.
Definitely.
But I wouldn't have, I wouldn't put it high on my list of Pixar movies. Maybe it's like 4 or 5, somewhere in there. But this year it makes it pretty
4
high.
or 5? That's high to me.
That is pretty high.
Well, Pixar's only made like, what, 10, 15 movies tops?
I think it's number 8 for me, and I really liked it. 4 or 5, that's great, dude. I mean, you have Toy Story 1, 2, 3, you have Ratatouille, Inside Out.
Yeah, 14 or 15 movies, but they're all kind of classics, so
Yeah.
4 or 5 is good.
Ratatouille, yeah. I mean, no, it can be that, but I think that's a pretty high accolade for them. So I had Onward really high on my list, but as I binged some of these screeners the past couple weeks and just really giving my list some thought, Onward did not quite make this list. It got pushed over. It's actually number 11. It's an honorable mention.
Oh, it made it from high on the list to not on it at all?
To number 11. Yeah, well,
it's a lot of screeners.
That's how it, yeah, well, not just that. Some of them I had seen before, but you just kind of really critically think and move stuff around. I mean, it's such a good movie. I had a really good time watching it. I think Tom Holland's character is written in such a real way. I like the way he's playing back his father's tapes. I felt like that made him a very realistic character. Yeah, I really wanted to put that on my list. It would have kicked Invisible Man off, and I just really, really wanted to have that movie on here. But Onward is so good. It's like a solidified spot 11. If I had like a top 15, it would definitely.
And gotta give Chris Pratt shout out for that too. His character was really fantastic as well. He played a wonderful goof.
Everyone, Octavia Spencer was hilarious. I thought.
I think Jason knows I'm not a fan of this movie.
Yeah, Rishabh just does not like Onward.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't felt both of Pixar's releases to be particularly fantastic this year. I know everyone's, head over heels over for Soul. And I think it's better than Onward for sure. Someone needs to explain Onward to me. And
I think Soul. Oh yeah, Soul is better than Onward.
Soul's better. I'm not a huge fan of Soul. I don't know why I heard that
backward in my head. I thought you were saying Onward was better.
No.
I think Onward's
sure,
better than Soul, but I'm probably the only person. If you think Onward is better than Soul, please make my life feel a little better. And
or if you don't like Onward, that's also let's bear up our flag for that too.
Yeah, because honestly, you're in the I think most people liked Onward.
Yeah, most did. Yeah.
Even if they thought it was middle tier, lower tier Pixar, it like has an 80 something on Rotten Tomatoes. So I think most critics liked it.
Don't know why, but okay.
So good, man. The two brothers, their adventure, and then the ending. Come on, the ending subverts your expectations. I think it did. I didn't.
It though? I think the ending was fine. I felt like the ending of Soul and Onward are comparably fine. I don't know.
Oh, see, I didn't like. We'll talk about Soul later because I think it's on David's list. I really like Soul too, by the way. But I have an issue with it, which we'll talk about later on.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, Rishabh, what was your number 5?
So my number 5 was a Netflix movie that came out some months ago that I think caused a good amount of stir in most fans and critics and things like that. This is Charlie Kaufman's I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Yes.
Definitely a movie that I think, it's going to be divisive just by the nature of it, just given the way that things are approached, given the content of it. But the way I really see it is this very sort of amazingly crafted surrealist poem. And it has sort of these traces back to a very kind of classic Swedish filmmaker named Ingmar Bergman, who used to do these very kind of stream of consciousness surrealist movies. And I think what Kaufman did particularly well with this movie is that he puts it in sort of the guise of this like horror road movie. It's very strange. It's all very strange, to be honest. But it's also
Just
very
a little bit.
just a little bit, and it's also very kind of alluring and beautiful at the same time. And I love how the movie ends. I love how thoughtful the movie is. I think the performances here are great. Jesse Plemons and of course Jesse Buckley. They both have the same first name, which is actually pretty interesting when you watch the movie. Things get weird around that.
Yeah, they're both on my ballot, I think, for best actor and actress. I need to give that more thought, but they're absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I feel like Jesse Buckley is a little bit better than Jesse Plemons, but I think they're both so incredibly strange in the movie. The whole movie is so incredibly weird.
I love Meth Damon and everything he's in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think a lot of people will find the movie divisive, but I think the strangeness of it also has like a thoughtfulness and sort of a beauty to it too. And I think the final moments of the movie really glue it together so well. So yeah, a divisive one, but one to at least seek out for sure. I think Jason, you saw this movie too.
I did, and I really liked it. It did just get pushed into my honorable mentions, but it is, and the reason why, as much as I liked it and as much as I appreciated the filmmaking, it is an incredibly slow burn. The first scene in the car, I think, is maybe 10 to 20 minutes long. It is a really long just conversation. I think also the supporting characters in that movie are really good. Toni Collette,
Yeah,
always a powerhouse,
of course.
and so and to be honest, it definitely is not my cup of tea. I like movies that are very abstract like that and very where you're not sure what's going on. There's a lot of interpretation involved. I almost get. I mean, it definitely forces you to pay attention, and you're wondering. For me, I'm wondering, did I miss something? Why am I not getting this, or why is this not stitching together? Or why did this happen? But by the end of it all, I was like, wow, like that's a unique one to say the least, because definitely no one's gonna predict how it goes. You know what I mean? It's one of those. As much as it was, I do feel a little bit of a chore to get through it all. By the end, I felt like I was definitely hit, and I wanted to talk about it. Like I was texting my friend, dude, did you see this movie? I had to go look online to figure out like what did this mean or what did that mean, because there's a lot of things that are confusing and don't really make sense, but definitely was mysterious and not your run-of-the-mill jump scare horror. And so appreciated the ambitiousness to do something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a very ambiguous movie, which is why I said I think a lot of people are going to either love it or hate it, which is interesting because you're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Most people have had that sort of love-hate reaction to it. Yeah, I definitely did love it. I feel like the slow burn for me enhanced the movie personally, but for me,
I think I did not like it as I was watching, but by the end of it all, I was sold on it because I hung in there.
It's on my to watch list because
you should.
But I've always had this love-hate relationship with Kaufman. I haven't really loved something he's done since being John Malkovich, and all of his movies kind of have all of the elements you're talking about. So I'm like,
it's a Kaufman film.
Yeah, it's a Kaufman film. I want to watch it. He's good for me. When he's bad, he's really boring for me.
I'm curious what you'd think about it. It's definitely a film you want to watch it when you're like super alert and have like no distractions, because it's definitely.
Or you're not super alert and you just let that experience wash over you and see what happens.
For me,
and be confused AF when you finally look up and you're like,
exactly,
why the hell is that happening?
For me, though, am I about to watch like a Being John Malkovich or an Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or am I about to watch Adaptation or a Synecdoche, or however that's pronounced?
I think Synecdoche, Synecdoche, New York.
Synecdoche, yeah.
So I'm not super familiar with Kaufman's work, which makes it interesting because I'm really looking forward to getting into it now. But from what I understand, like, you know, it's an adaptation of a novel, and from what I understand, that novel plays things a little bit more straightforward. But once Kaufman gets hand of any novel that's even slightly strange, I think he, you know, cranks the level up to 100 and does whatever ambiguous things that he can with that. I think, you know, even if you don't love the narrative, I think visually this is the dreamlike imagery in the movie is just greatly shot and also perfectly executed. But I think those car scenes too that you talked about from a visual standpoint really kind of stand out to me, even from a dialogue perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So my fifth favorite film of 2020 was Yes, God, Yes. This was Karen Main's directorial debut, and it's actually based off of a short film that she made back in 2017. I loved it. Natalia Dyer is just so incredibly fun to watch her act. She's really good in this film. And so she is portraying this teenager who's a Catholic girl, a really good girl, and discovers porn. And so she's kind of conflicted, like, what do I do? Should I do this? She feels bad for it. And I just felt like it was a good realistic take on, you know, when people are taught certain beliefs but then find something that is appealing to them online. What do you do in that situation, and how are other people in the church world behaving? Are they living up to the standard? There's had a lot of funny moments. It had a lot of relatable, realistic moments. And so Yes, God, Yes was one that it can be a little bit of an uncomfortable experience, but it connected with me and I found it engaging from beginning to end.
This is one that I liked too. It didn't make my list, but it just probably the reason I didn't like it more is it was pretty triggering for me. Like
Uh-huh.
I grew up in that world of hypocrisy, deep seated hypocrisy and chastising people for perfectly normal human behavior. So like I lived her journey and it was just heart wrenching to watch.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I think it was effective. I
Mhm.
do think that they a little bit over the top, but I think it needed to be done for entertainment purposes. And I think I can see some church people being mad at that, but I do think they a little over villainized like the way the Catholic people presented like their
You know, I've
stance.
met people exactly like that, man.
Then good to know, because I grew up in a church obviously that was not okay with that, but was not so cold. Their demeanor was so not friendly at all. Where I grew up, and I mean, I love my church family. I grew up in a very welcoming, warm, still, you know, having the beliefs that they had, but it wasn't so fire and brimstone like I felt like the people in here were. So it's actually good to know that you're telling me that there are people like that, because then that makes it even more of a heartbreaking situation that this character's in.
I don't know that I
yeah.
use the words good to know, but
Well,
I'd rather there
well,
weren't
it's
people like
yeah,
that.
it's terrible that that is the case, but it's good to know that those characters weren't falsified, because I felt it was over the top, because I personally am not familiar with people that fire and brimstone. I just hear about them.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this movie too. It's number 12 on my list. Definitely an honorable mention. For me, I think, you know, talking about this movie from a religious perspective is always interesting because I think it's actually, I don't want to say, you know, pro-religion or anything like that, but it has a pretty empathetic view towards the church, is what I felt. I don't know if you'd agree, Jason. And I think it'd actually be a pretty interesting resource for the church too, or religions in general, just because it kind of takes a view on hypocrisy within religion, which I think is quite interesting, and essentially says that, you know, it's fine to be religious when you're being open with one another, right? And being open within the church or whatever that religious institution is, and having dialogues and communications that are real and not just sort of this made up thing. So I found the movie very, very interesting and thought provoking from that point of view too.
Cool deal. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on now. I think everyone went through their. Did everyone go through number 5?
We
Yeah.
did.
Okay. I have really bad memory, in case you couldn't tell. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on to number 4. Who wants to go first?
I can go ahead and start us off. Jason, I know you watched this movie pretty recently. We just talked about it before we started recording. I don't know if you expected it to be this high for me, but it is Shit House at number 4. Very high up in the list for me.
It's wonderful.
You know, given the name, you'd think it's a terrible movie, right? But no, it's a really, really honest, surprisingly very unflinching, very kind of unapologetic view of what American college life is like, and sort of a very realistic portrayal of a coming of age story that feels real and relatable. And I thought the performances here were great. It's directed by Cooper Raiff, who also stars as one of the leads in the film, and he co-stars alongside Dylan Galula. The chemistry that they shared, I think, was brilliant. I know a lot of people have compared the movie to the Before trilogy, and that whole sequence where they're kind of walking around and just talking about things and in a very natural kind of way. So it has that sort of Linklater-esque stamp on it, which I really like. And it's done with such detailed precision, and the dialogue that's in the movie. I mean, I could literally recognize that, especially having gone through an experience like that pretty recently myself, in terms of going to college within the past few years and having that sort of currency to it. I thought Cooper Raiff literally took scenes from real life and put them on screen. So that's how realistic I thought the movie was.
It tugged at my emotions during that climax of the film where they're having their argument and he basically gets called a freak by her. I found that movie to be really engaging. It's on my honorable mentions. I think that it was very well done. Like you said, their chemistry was really good, and it's unfortunately a sad take at the hookup culture that is in that happens, that you have people that are like, I'm not looking for a relationship, I'm just going to hook up. And when you have two people that have different expectations of how their relationship is going to play out, it's really sad. And I haven't gone to college recently, but I've moved to Houston within the past 3 or 4 years. And coming here, when you meet someone new, it means a lot because you're not very close to many people. And I have had that experience similar to what Cooper's character goes through, where you meet someone and you're hoping that it becomes more, or you're hoping that person will pay attention to you. And then when they don't, and you're trying to reach out to them, it's like, why are you so obsessive? It's like, really? Like, you seem to be having a good time. What happened, or what did I do? And I think that was portrayed so realistically. And I almost didn't like her character. The ending, just kind of how it rushes, like,
Yeah.
her kind of having a resolve, didn't blow me away. I felt like it wasn't earned as much as it could have been, but I felt like everything leading up to that climax was so on point and realistic.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially about the ending. I felt like that was probably the weakest point of the movie just because of how rushed it was. But what I did like is how they afforded time to both sides and both characters in that relationship, and explored both, especially during that whole sequence when they're walking and kind of dialoguing back and forth. I think you get a real sense of both, of who both of these characters are. So I thought that was really well done.
Awesome. David, what's your number 4?
So my number 4, this is where Birds of Prey fell for me. I think I already raved about this one before, but just how much it brought out the perspective of Harley Quinn, and it was fun. Like, I hadn't really enjoyed a comic book movie like that in forever. Like, the Marvel movies, they're always really good or entertaining or creative, but this was the first time I was just like walked out and I'm like, it was like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I enjoyed that movie, and I kind of shared my thoughts on this earlier. I have not seen it since I saw it in the theater. Have you given it a rewatch?
yeah, I have a couple of times actually.
I want to rewatch it just to kind of, because I mean, both of y'all Really love this movie. I think I gave it like a B or a B minus, but definitely one I wouldn't mind revisiting. It was a fun popcorn flick.
For me, I like David said, I think it's about breaking that formula, which I think, we're always trying to do with superhero movies and things like that. But
Yeah,
for me, it's just refreshingly creative. It went places and did things more inventively than I think a lot of superhero films have done in the past. And I feel like it took really good elements of Suicide Squad and turned them into things that actually work within the context of the movie. So.
she definitely is the best part of the Suicide Squad film. But the one thing that did strike me weird in this film is just I felt like it was like her and the supporting characters. I felt like, I don't know, they were just they didn't get as much depth, and so I didn't really care for them as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
But
think it's been like a number one criticism for people.
I don't think you're supposed to care about the other characters because Harley Quinn doesn't care about the other characters. Like at the
true,
end,
but it's called Birds of Prey, and if
yeah,
they're the Birds of Prey, I felt like it's their movie.
yeah, but that's fun to like push the subject of the movie to the background.
True, true. I'll definitely want to give that one a rewatch. So my number 4 was The Father. This is by Florian Zeller, and I felt like it was incredibly heartbreaking. And Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman give like 100% are going to be nominated come Oscar season for their performances. It's so incredible. And so Anthony Hopkins is suffering dementia, and Olivia Colman, his daughter, is trying to push him to go see someone or get a caretaker, and he's so against it, and he's a little over the top. No, I'm not getting anyone. And what I love about the film, what makes it above average of a film and puts it into a category that's so unique and interesting, and it's a filmmaker who takes use of video editing tools to make you have an experience, is you're seeing this movie from the perspective of Anthony Hopkins' character. So he's having a conversation with his daughter how he's going to get married, and then the next scene her husband's in the room, and he's like, oh, we've been married 10 years. And he's like, what? Like, he's like, I what do you mean? My daughter just told me she's going to move. Like, and you get confused as an audience member because the movie's edited in a way to where you don't really have a sense of time, and different actors end up playing different characters because people that have dementia don't remember people and faces all that well. And so it's incredible. The acting's phenomenal. It's a quick pace film. Things happen that are always engaging. So if you just kind of want to see two actors pop off, Father was great. I've seen it 2 times already.
Yeah, it's on my to watch list as well. I know I was almost had a chance to watch it, couldn't quite get to it, but yeah, with all the awards buzz that it's generating, I think Olivia Colman, Anthony Hopkins are shoo-ins at this point for awards race.
Definitely, for sure. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to number 3. Rishabh, why don't you mention what your third favorite is this year?
So my third favorite is probably my most controversial and underrated pick. This is another Disney Plus original, After Clouds, which I mentioned at number 9.
The one and only Ivan.
The one and only Ivan. No, guys, no, it's not. Hey, if that's your number 3, that's good too.
No, definitely is not. Maybe on my worst list.
Good in a subjective way, Not
Yeah.
not good in an objective way per se. But my number 3 is directed by Julia Hart. So if you saw I'm Your Woman recently, that's also directed by her. And this is Stargirl.
She did Fast Color, right?
She did do Fast Color, yes. And
is it better than Fast Color? I wasn't a huge Fast Color fan.
I didn't see Fast Color, but I do want to see I'm Your Woman because I'm hearing a lot of great things about that one.
That is one that I need to get to. I'm Your Woman.
Yeah, I think it has. Does it have Evan Rachel Wood or is it someone else?
Rachel, that sounds right. Rachel Brosnahan or something like that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, anyway, so this movie is a adaptation.
What's the title again? Can you say it one more time?
It's called Stargirl.
Stargirl. Okay.
Yeah.
Disney Plus.
It's an adaptation of a Jerry Spinelli novel, which used to be this kind of New York Times bestseller kids book writer. I know I've read books of his as a kid, but so this is directed and written by Julia Hart, and she co-wrote the movie with I think Kristen Hann, and then her husband Jordan Horowitz, who was also involved with La La Land. So it has some of that kind of DNA in this too. But I think this movie is extremely underrated. I think a lot more people need to check it out. It's this very good exploration of kindness, actually, as cheesy as that might sound. It's done in a surprisingly elegant way. There's a lot of music and cheer to it, but there's also this sort of bittersweet soul to it as well. The two lead performers are Grace Vanderwall and, I want to say his name right, Graham Vercherry. I thought they did a really good job of, fleshing out this relationship that they have, and really getting at the heart of some really interesting themes around identity and compassion and things of that nature. So it's a movie that I think it's one of those movies I think it would be cool if someone had seen it and then I could talk to them about it, because there are a number of sort of interesting things to it, but one I'd recommend for sure.
Yeah, definitely put it on my to watch list. David, what was your third favorite film?
For my number 3, I went with another fun, refreshing one, actually. I went with The Gentleman from earlier on in the year by Guy Ritchie, who's a very hit or miss director for me. When he misses, I hate him, and he's one of the worst things I've ever seen. But when he does well, I end up having a lot of fun and just, feeling like walking out of the theater, like, just feeling great. And
Yeah.
The Gentleman, one of those where I felt great walking out of the theater. But it wasn't just Guy Ritchie there. It was, Matthew McConaughey firing on all cylinders. It was a great performance from Colin Farrell, Hugh Grant, Tom Wu. Even Charlie Hunnam, who I tend to not really like he can play one type of character pretty well, and Sons of Anarchy did that, and everything else I've seen him in since then, I've just been like, oh, you're just trying to have him play Sons of Anarchy again. But he actually managed to show a little breadth here, or widening out his net and playing a different type of character than he has in those movies. And it was nice. It was a change of pace, and it made me like him a little bit more as an actor than I previously had. So that's where I was at with The Gentleman.
Did not see The Gentleman, but I did like what Guy Ritchie did with Aladdin, despite the fact that that movie did not get too much love. Obviously, it's not better than that animated classic, but I did have fun with Aladdin. Did you get to see The Gentleman, Rishabh?
I did see The Gentleman. For me, this was a pretty standard kind of caper comedy. I think it's the type of thing where Guy Ritchie was trying to recreate a type of movie you would have seen a while back, for sure.
He was returning to the formula for Snatch, if anything.
Yes, yeah. So for me, those kind of movies, I feel like, first of all, the number one thing that I did not love about this movie, which I think is something that people are either going to love or hate, which is the whole thing is kind of told as a flashback. I'm not a huge fan of that aspect, but I do think it's worth checking out if you want to see a bunch of great actors, going off of each other and playing off of each other and doing great things with that. I think Matthew McConaughey is pretty much, he brings value to whatever he's in. I've never really had a time where I feel like he's really been miscast. I don't know if any of you have seen Serenity, but I even like him in Serenity.
I liked him in that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the most boring things I've ever seen in my life.
I did not like Serenity.
No one did. Seriously, though, no one did. No one I've ever talked to has liked that in an unironic manner. But
I almost want to stop and talk about Serenity because it was
that's a whole podcast. You see.
Yeah,
so
let's
one
have
to
a
break
podcast. That's funny. So my third favorite film, I think David had mentioned it earlier, was Promising Young Woman. I just went to go watch it again at a theater. It was on my list, I think is 7 or 8, but after watching it again with a friend, I had watched it by myself on a laptop. After watching it again, it just went up in how much I enjoyed that film. Again, Carey Mulligan, I definitely she's going to be on my ballot for best actress. She definitely deserves that nomination. There's one other person which I'll talk about later on in my list that I think deserves the win, but she's so phenomenal in that film.
Yeah, I'm loving the buzz that Promising Young Woman's getting. I think it's a really well made film, but it does sadden me a little bit that Carey Mulligan's kind of career has gone unnoticed awards wise. I think she's won an Oscar, but I feel like she also doesn't work a lot. So I'm glad that she's finally getting the recognition she deserves. She's really terrific in this movie, as usual, I would say. But
Yeah.
I think she, I feel like with Promising Young Woman, she's also bringing a very different side of herself
Yeah.
that she does bring a lot for other movies. So I, understand why she's getting a lot more buzz for this film too. And I think, yeah, it's on my honorable mention. So I'll definitely talk about this one a little bit more later. It's one to check out.
Cool deal, cool deal. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to number 2. And my second favorite film, this is another one that was mentioned before, is Run. I loved it, loved the tension in it, loved the both actresses' performance in it, and Anish Chakante is awesome. Rishabh, what was your number 2?
My number 2, we also talked about, that was Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I felt like the just urgent messages in the film and the way in which they were communicated, that very raw, very subtle way of doing things. I think someone mentioned that lack of music focused on the sound design. I mean, it immerses you into the world that the characters are in, and that's a really heartbreaking and grim world and a portrait of a very sombering fact for, I guess, the United States and many other parts of the world. So for me, it's this very empathetic, immersive film that I think everyone should see. And I'm glad that it's also PG-13, which is because I think it's a movie that needs to be seen by a very wide audience.
David, did you get the chance to see that movie?
No, I didn't get to see it.
Definitely recommend it, man. What was your number 2?
Yeah.
So my number 2, I am really excited to talk about. It was The Lodge. And also, I finally get to talk about one for number 2 that we haven't talked about before.
Yeah.
Yes.
But The Lodge, so it really kind of hit. I just want to throw out in general, this has been just a great year for horror in general, and that we've had a lot of creative, fun entries in the genre that have had things to say. I have not previously liked this genre as much as I did in the past few years, and this year has been no exception. But The Lodge, in particular, I think is one of my favorites in that it's beautiful cinematography. It has beautiful cinematography. I love the stark landscapes. I love the contrast with the dollhouse in it. Kind of reminded me of Hereditary, but without the supernatural elements to it. I felt like the plot at the end, I knew what was happening. I was able to. I picked up on the foreshadowing. I thought the foreshadowing was very nicely done, and the really evil thread in that was just so heartbreaking. Watching it play out and watching what happened to those characters was just in a total meat grinder.
I got to see The Lodge at Fantastic Fest a year ago in October 2019. I think it is still considered a 2020 release because it didn't come out till this past year. But I remember, I really wish I'd revisited it because it definitely could have crept into my top 15. But I remember really enjoying it. Not as much as Hereditary, but it definitely had like that slow burn, but a realistic feel to it.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't put it over Hereditary, but it's right in there. I don't think I'd even put it over Midsummer. I think Midsummer was really
Oh, I'd
great
put it
from
over
last year.
Midsummer. I hated Midsummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, only because Midsummer, I just felt like I was on something while I was watching it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that choice. The Lodge is excellent. I want to revisit that. That's one of those I would have, had I not had a stack of screeners that I needed to go through. I really want to show my family that, or like a friend that, just to see what they think of it.
I've watched that one a couple of times. I just really liked the craftsmanship in it.
The two kids, especially the it kid, what's his name?
Oh shoot, Jaden Martell.
Yeah, Jaden Martell. He's so good to watch in everything. He's good in Adventures of Wolf Boy and that,
Hmm.
in Knives Out. He's fine. Uh, that's a good pick.
Yeah, I love the performance from Riley as the lead, Grace, in that. I liked how
Yeah.
her introduction was so postponed, and you only see her in shadows and in the background for so long before she really starts to get a character that you get to get involved with.
Yeah, for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get to our last pick. But before we do that, we do all have a few honorable mentions. And so we're just going to kind of really quickly go through these. Probably won't say more than like one, maybe two sentences just to get through all of these. But my honorable mentions for 2020 probably would just be like on a top 20 list, would be Onward. Best animated film. I liked it more than Soul, which I don't think anyone on the planet is going to agree with that. Soul would be right after. I liked Bad Education, The Wolf of Snow Hollow, Swallow, Shithouse, Sound of Metal. I'm thinking of Ending Things,
I gotta throw
Trial of Chicago 7, and Nomadland.
I gotta throw out Color Out of Space as a great little honorable mention for this year. That one barely got a release at the beginning of the year. It's so hard to get into. It's quirky and it's off the rails, but you know if you love oh, why am I blanking on his name?
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas
Cage.
Cage. If you love Nicolas Cage going crazy, it's kind of a fun one. And if you're just a Lovecraft fan in general.
Yeah, definitely. That was a that didn't quite hit me on any type of like huge phenomenal level, but I
Me
thought it.
either, but I do feel like that one gets honorable mention because as far as stuff that falls into the niche, I could see that one being one I'll revisit later on
Got
as
it
just hitting this kind of weird, you know, uh, cult sweet spot.
for sure. Did you have any other ones you wanted to mention, or
I don't think so.
it's been a dry year from
It's been a
films?
dry year.
Just to be real with everyone, Rashad, what would be your honorable mentions list?
So I've got quite a few here, but I think some of them we've already talked about, so I won't spend too much time there. Obviously, Run, we talked about extensively. Yes, God, yes, I thought was terrific. The Boys in the Band, it's a pretty good adaptation of a play. I think it has, it's a very direct adaptation of that play, but I think they did a really good job of bringing that cinematic kind of crackle to that film. One movie that was really big last year, kind of got a wide release this year, that's Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Hmm.
Also an honorable mention, that was my number 14. Definitely check that one out. Promising Young Woman, which we talked about also pretty extensively. Carey Mulligan's great in that. And then I've just got 6 here that I'll go through real fast. The Half of It on Netflix, really good movie to check out. The Outpost, a very good gritty war drama to check out. I'll pair that with Extraction, which I thought was a really good action film. Tiger Tail, a really kind of heartbreaking story and drama that's really worth checking out as well. And Dick Johnson is Dead. That's a good one to check out too as a documentary. And on Netflix, there's a pretty great film called Straight Up to check out as well.
Yeah, sorry, my laptop's I'm like, I really hate to step out of frame, but I'd rather do that than my laptop just die. um Yeah, I heard good things about Dick Johnson is Dead. I haven't had the chance to see it yet. Um, that's a good list of honorable mentions that you have there. I do want to say uh, something I just watched. Um, I just kind of ran through my honorable mentions. So Bad Education I just saw. I thought it was really good. That's like 13, I think, on like if I had a longer list. Hugh Jackman is so incredibly good in that. I really wanted to fit that into my top 10. I just don't think I was able to quite fit that in there, but it's a school board, a school district is embezzling money, and it's kind of a problem that I could see as being something realistic that happens but isn't really talked about. And this is it's based on a true story, and it's portrayed so incredibly well. And great cast, and so I really think that's one that probably hasn't been talked about that I wanted to mention. Swallow, Halle Bennett is in that movie. Halle
Yeah.
Bennett. Yeah, she gives a good performance. I don't think it'll get like awards, like it'll be an award contender performance, but she's really good in that I think people ought to take a second look at that film. And I think all the other films we talked about a bit.
So before we move on to our number ones, can we also just spend a minute talking about how disappointing Tenet was?
No.
Oh no.
I'm
It was
just
very
kidding.
disappointing that I could not see Tenet.
I did not see Tenet. So that's why I wouldn't know what to say. I have it to watch it. I don't, from what I've heard, I don't think I'm going to like it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing it. I mean, I'm a huge Chris Nolan fan, but just what everyone has said about the movie, about it being Chris Nolan's first kind of big misfire on a big scale, it's kind of upsetting. But
I did not think Christopher Nolan could disappoint me. I walked into that movie thinking he could do no wrong, and now I'm like, maybe I was wrong about him.
I think it was 2020. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's go ahead and get into our number one. Rishabh, I'll let you go ahead and unveil your favorite film of the year.
Absolutely. So my number one is the movie that I think pretty much everyone's talking about. It's, best picture, best actress. It's everywhere,
I know what it is. I know what it is. Can I guess?
I think you do. Go ahead, Jason.
Nomadland.
It is Nomadland, and I was a bit surprised to see that was on your honorable mentions. But
yeah,
my number one movie is definitely Nomadland.
I definitely think Frances McDormand deserves a recognition for her performance. I'll let you talk about it. It's your film.
I haven't seen this one, but I want to because I love Frances McDormand in anything. I'll watch a movie to see Frances McDormand.
Yeah, she's terrific in the film. I think to be honest, I can't really think of another actress that I feel like really deserves this win. Come March next year.
Okay, really? Okay.
I'm interested in seeing which one you're talking about, but yeah, I mean, Chloe Zhao. It's just shocks me that she's doing a Marvel movie next. That's crazy. This movie, even though Marvel kind of has this tradition of taking indie directors and giving them blockbuster films, it's still kind of insane to think that she'll be doing that. Given how, how lyrical this movie is, how realistic it is. How great and understated the performances are, how amazingly shot it is. I think the really distinct and unique connection that the film makes between, pioneers, like American pioneers, between that and the nomads that are featured in the film is amazing. I think the way that they get at that kind of very distinctly American soul and American tradition of nomads and of pioneers is very interesting, but it's also not this very romanticized film. It definitely goes into the grit of that everyday life. And it pierces at things, I think, that are very current, like things like Frances McDormand spending hours working at, an Amazon packaging center. And that a huge aspect of her life. I think including that in the film gives it a really real soul and a realistic soul, which makes the film feel current, but also very traditional in a really good poetic kind of sense. So I thought Chloe Zhao knocked it out of the park with Nomadland. This is one definitely to check out when it gets that wide release in 21. For me, hands down, my pick for Best Picture come Oscar season.
By a large margin.
By a
I
large margin.
definitely think it deserves all the love that it's getting. It's definitely one I liked. It's definitely something not like Mank, which is getting recognition right now, that I wasn't a huge fan of. But I did like Nomadland, and it's definitely one I want to watch again. It was one that I engaged with, and I want to go show my family and friends and think about what's happening. It was one, though, where she starts, like in the film, she starts off kind of struggling from day to day. So from her struggling to going to having nothing didn't feel like such a substantial difference. But I do think, and also the other thing, she's a terrific actress, but a lot of the acting that she does is very subtle and nonverbal. There's not like that scene that she gets to like go off. And just being totally like transparent, those are, I think, kind of the performances that tend to grab me or engage with me a little bit more. But I think that it was very educational and informative, that there really are people that live this nomad lifestyle. I think that there's only 2 real actors in this film. Everyone else
is because everyone else is the actual nomads.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. Like, these are people that actually live this way. So definitely a film that I think is educational, that has a really good performance in it. I didn't quite get hit emotionally, though, like I think it did with some people. But I do think it's a very well-made film, and one I definitely want to revisit. David, what was your number 1 film? I know what it is.
Yeah. So mine is Soul, which I think is probably the best thing Pixar has ever done. It touched me on a deeply emotional level. It's this one topic that I just don't think gets addressed very often, is what it feels like to have deep, deep passion for something that you just never get to realize. And you have to live your life always wanting or being in touch with this thing, that and reconciling that with being happy. So that I found very interesting, and I found their approach to it very interesting. So I found it to be a tremendous tearjerker. I was just sitting there identifying with absolutely every single character they threw out there, and single thing they had to deal with. I'm like,
Yeah, I thought Soul was great. I definitely liked it more than Rishabh, who I don't think was too pleased with this year.
I feel like I'm coming off as a much bigger naysayer to this movie than I actually am. But for me, it's just the whole thing of like switching bodies with the cat and all these kind of cartoony things that, for me, they got in the way of what Pixar and the filmmakers were trying to say with the movie, which I thought was, they were trying to get at something really beautiful and very deep, but it kept cutting back to this very kind of Looney Tunes like storyline. And so for me, it just that those 2 things put together did not work for me. I think what David mentioned about the movie trying to get at passion and things of that sort, those are the things that really impacted me. And especially the character of Joe and the passion that he has for jazz. I wish the movie focused in more on that than some of the higher like existential things they try to go for, while trying to do that through like a weird body swap story. I just felt like the elements mishmashed way too much for me. That being said, it's still Pixar, and I think they still brought a real serious standard. I think I'd even say that with Onward, which I don't really love at all. But those films, I think they're pretty standard animated films. I think Soul is ambitious, but it failed at its ambitions. So I'll just say that much about Soul.
So I liked I liked it was, Inside Out. It has that feel of going very abstract, and I liked the look of this world. It's made out of simple lines, and the elevator to death is all portrayed incredibly abstract. Like, I don't know how people like imagine that and draw it and like sketch it all out. I do think it is at that caliber of creativity. For me, the way some of the magic, like the magical elements worked in that film just didn't quite, it just seemed a little hokey to me. Like,
That's the word. Yeah.
I didn't quite buy into how it worked, and it had to be explained. And it was just like, okay, well, that works out for the way the film flows. But I did find it to be very comedic. I loved once like the cat is involved. The cat had a lot of the funny moments, I felt. But yeah, I mean, I felt like it was fun. It was watchable. I've seen it twice. And it made my honorable mentions. But yeah, I definitely am. It's like a mixed positive for me.
Yeah, I think me and you are both sort of in the minority, me more than you. I think pretty much everyone I've talked to has pretty much enjoyed this film.
Yeah, David, I think you're like your train of thought on loving it at the level that you did is more on point
Yeah,
with what most other critics how they like this movie.
pretty much.
Yeah, so that what everything you're saying sounds about right. Just yeah,
Because
just
most critics are disappointed with their lives. I really,
yeah,
really gel with that.
that was the last. I was trying to think of what that last thing I wanted to mention. And then the ending, I felt like could have used something a little bit more dramatic or substantial. He just kind of has that realization, smiles, and the film ends. I felt like had there been something more of an event or something
You know,
significant that happened, I think I could have been like I don't know. It's hard to remember that ending because it's so
Yeah.
okay.
you know what it's like
And
when someone tells you
just
it's
the
a,
just the last problem I have with it, and then I'll let
yeah.
like is the way he's redeemed is just it's kind of silly, but also like they're like, oh, we'll talk to the what do you call that guy, the mathematician dude that the counting
Yeah.
guy. He's just like, look over there, and changes it, and that's how like everything becomes okay. It was a funny moment, but it also, I guess, loosened the sacrifice that occurred, and like that he was going to be stuck there. They're like, oh, we'll just give him another chance because he did such a good job.
Yeah. For me, I think it's like Pixar just overshot their capabilities this time. They went for this very sort of adult drama, to be honest. It's dealing with some really, really lofty themes. I mean, you're literally you're taking on existence itself. And
Yeah,
also having to insert these sort of gags in the movie to kind of please the real fan base of Pixar films, which is younger kids and younger audiences. So it didn't really work for me, that balance that they were trying to do, which is weird because I think Pixar in the past has done an incredible job mixing those things together. But I feel like here they got too ambitious with some of the content that they were willing to take on. And even though I think I'm blanking on the director's name, he's done several great Pixar films, including Inside Out, which I really like. I feel like this was just
I think
trying
it's
to top
Peter
Inside Out, and that
Doctor.
was about.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Pete
it
Doctor.
sounds right. Pete Doctor sounds right. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, Pete Doctor.
right.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it. It's on my top 15. I just definitely had some things that I wish I wasn't distracted by. All right, Rashad, what was your? Wait, we already did.
We're on you.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay, so I will preface this. I did not see as many films as I did last year. Last year, I saw 116 new release movies. This year, I got to see 58 new release movies. I saw more films than that. Once the pandemic hit, I kind of took a little bit of a break, and I actually used that time to catch up on a lot of old classics that I had not had the chance to see. So of this 58 movies, I saw like 20 something. I've seen like half of these movies within the past 2 months just getting screeners, so it's been a bit of a craze. But out of those 58 new release films that I watched, my favorite movie, the movie that I felt had really great performances in it, was educational, entertainingly so, was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This is a movie you can find on Netflix. Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman are both going to get nominated for their performances in it. And as much as I adored Anthony Hopkins' performance in The Father, I really think Chadwick Boseman is going to take the Oscar for his performance in.
How could he not? Because this is his last chance.
Yes, exactly. 1, it's his last chance. 2, it's his best performance he's ever given. And 3, it's really damn good. I think it's as good, if not better, than The Father. I'll say that. That's why I'm so conflicted. I'm dreading having to go vote in my critics group because I honestly wish both of them could win. They're both very, very, very good. But there's a scene in the final act where he gets that scene to go off, and I just feel for his character. They've built it in such a way to where you understand everything that he's gone through and feels. Just kind of the gist of this film is Viola Davis is a musician who is recording an album, and things just keep going wrong, and the people that are producing this album, they're white people that are producing an album for her, want things to go a certain way, but she is the man, and Viola Davis steals every scene that she's in. And there's a lot of scenes where she's not on screen. It's cutting to Chadwick Boseman and these other instrument players that are kind of separate and arrive early. Her character arrives late into the recording room, but when she gets there, it's her way or the highway. And I tend to like characters that are very blunt, have no filter, because I feel like in real life you don't get to see that very often. A lot of people are very polite and aren't extremely, just to say, kind of rude the way she is. But
yeah, screw polite people.
Yeah, but it's fun to see her play this very unfiltered character, and you understand why she is that way. Towards the third act, she basically says that they don't care about me. As soon as they're done recording this, they could care less about what happens to me. They just want my voice. And you really understand this, how she feels a little bit used in this situation. So she's my pick for best actress. I think that she's extremely good. I'd be fine with her or Carrie from Promising Young Woman taking that award. I know Rishabh would definitely want Frances to take that, and I would have no problem with that.
Here's the thing though, Jason, like, to be honest, I feel like this race for 2020's best actress is pretty close. To be honest, I wouldn't be mad if I definitely would be mad if Carey Mulligan got it. I've long been her fan, but like Viola Davis, I mean, she's unbeatable. It's hard to say pick any fault in her performance. I wouldn't say, she just blew me away in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but I feel like, she was terrific in it still.
What you can say is it's unfair for someone you like so much to have such a great performance in a year full of great performances.
Yeah, basically.
There's a lot. Vanessa Kirby is getting one, I'm sure, for Pieces of a Woman. That movie was also really, really good, by the way. I probably could have added that to my honorable mentions, but she's really good in that film. But yeah, the actress category is going to be kind of crazy this year.
Yeah,
there are
for me,
characters I wish had Best Actor awards or Best Actress awards, that they have so many terrific performances, but when they have a terrific performance, it's just in a year when someone else edges them out.
Yeah, that's how I was sad that Adam Driver didn't get his award for Marriage Story last year. Yeah,
that was a tough year too.
Yeah, So I loved Ma Rainey. I liked it from beginning to end. I thought the screenplay, which I believe is an adapted screenplay, was extremely interesting to listen to. The trumpet player, like all the band players, they have this argument, and Chadwick Boseman's character wants to kind of write his own music, and the guy, like, these white people promise that like they'll hook him up, but in the end only pay him very cheap for white folk to go reproduce what he worked hard to write out. And it's like, dang, it was an insightful and a little bit of a, oh, I feel for his character, and during this time period where they were kind of used in that way, it was pretty awful. And so even though they present themselves to be so polite and, what do you need, Ma Rainey, what can I do for you, I had a lot of fun with their characters and seeing how all that unfolded.
For sure.
So I think that about wraps it up. Do y'all have any last minute thoughts to add?
I can't really think of anything, but I know we were talking about, just the Oscars being and feeling really quite different this year. I think there's a lot of movies that we've listed out that I know for sure many people have probably not heard of. Typically there's bigger movies and also a lot more advertising that would go into some of those films. So hopefully this video kind of helped get some interesting movies on your radar. I think obviously movies like Invisible Man and Birds of Prey we all know about. But some of these smaller films, I think The Father for sure, and some of the other ones that we've mentioned throughout the video hopefully help get some on your radars.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you watched this all the way through, well, you are a trooper. Thank you so much. Definitely consider subscribing for more movie reviews, unboxing videos, and you can check out EskimoTV.net to see reviews written by myself and these other two awesome gentlemen, Rishabh, David. Thank you all so much for joining me today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we want to know what your favorite films are. We not only like to just talk about movies, but we like to talk about movies with you all. Were there any movies that we mentioned that you also really enjoyed? Please let us know. Give us your thoughts in the comments. Were there any that you were surprised by? Let us know. And thank you all so much, as always, for watching. And until next time, my name is Jason Escamilla from Eskimo TV.